since last Friday. Are there any other additions to the agenda at this time? Okay, can I have motions to?
Just what was on, wait a second, just what was on.
We added
Fred's
Fred's report in 7.1.
Yes, okay, just so we have that.
Motions to approve the agenda as amended. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Can I have motions to approve the minutes of the February regular Board of Education meeting?
I move.
Any discussion?
The only discussion I had was that I think we did before the meeting was to, in future meetings, add other sections for follow-up.
Yeah.
I have written up some follow-up from last week's meeting, or last month's meeting. I just want to make sure that we put that on as an agenda topic so that
It did get added. It did get added, and there will be discussion, so it'll stay in the minutes, and it needs to stay in the agenda too. Okay.
Now that was 5.1, is that right?
So we have motions to approve the minutes. Again, all in favor?
Aye.
We need to again have a discussion about the community participation protocols. We had them up last week, and since then, Paul and I met, went over the NISBA recommendations, and I didn't read them at the beginning, but we'll read them if you want to take action on them tonight. Can I have motions?
Are you?
Yeah, we'll discuss after. I think we can discuss after the motion. If we want to not do it tonight, we won't.
It's only on for discussion.
Oh, but there's a recommended action on mine.
That's only if you, after you discuss it,
Okay,
you want to go forward.
so we'll do discussion first.
Yeah.
So what's here is what the two of you came up with together?
We did, and there were some things we took out, some things we just shortened because they seemed redundant. I mean, there were a lot of things that were redundant in both the NISBA protocols and ours, and we took out the section about how to get items on the agenda just because that's in policy. And really, if you read it before the board meeting, by the time you read it, it's too late. So that really doesn't belong in the protocols for community participation. It belongs in policy.
Right, and that way we won't get that discrepancy between the two.
Conflict.
One
Yeah,
changes,
that's right.
and we don't change the
Yeah,
other.
that's right. So, I think when I said that we shortened things, NISBA had a long sentence about what was and wasn't allowed, and we shortened that to all speakers are requested to conduct themselves in a civil manner, and that really does cover all of those things that were in that sentence. So.
What about the third bullet about addressing the board stating the name?
I have that in the follow-up because that was asked as a question, but we did look that up and we did reword it for the reasons that I'll talk about when we get to the follow-up. But we have is asked to, and we ran that by our attorney. The old wording is must. So we'll talk about that later in the meeting. We both thought, as did our attorney, that that's important to leave. But it can't be that rigid. Okay. Any other discussion? If you want to go ahead and make motions to.
I would move to approve this.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion after the motions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And I'll read those protocols out loud when we get to that section for community participation. So.
Thank you both for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a consent agenda, which are agenda items 3.0 through 4.2. I'm going to just highlight a couple of them because they are unique. They're not usually in the consent agenda. And the first one is 3.6 about the buses. I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
Sure. It coincides with the budget development process. In our district, we have a board policy that requires anything that's going to be on the docket for the May vote has to be submitted 60 days prior to the vote. So this year it falls on March 15th, will be 60 days before. So typically, obviously you vote on the budget on May 15th, and then in this community it's typically a bus proposition and a library proposition. So that's why you see those on here now. They have to be submitted by March 15th. So and the library knows that, we know that, the transportation proposition. The way that the transportation proposition is worded, you'll see it's a motion to authorize the option of the board to finance or purchase buses. So this is not binding. It doesn't mean at this point that we are purchasing buses. We put this on every year at this time of year, so we have the option to do that. The dollar amount, really, it's a ceiling, so we can't exceed that amount in purchasing buses, whatever we decide to do. This mirrors what we did last year. What we're looking at now through the budget development process is a replacement, larger bus and smaller bus, similar to what we did last year. The ceiling, the expenditure can't exceed that amount. Whether we trade buses in, whether we sell the buses, ultimately impacts how much we borrow. So this is sort of a placeholder. It gives us the option through the budget process to go out and buy buses and borrow money to do so. And really, it's the same thing for the library. It's to get them in the pipeline so they can be on the ballot in May.
And also included in the consent agenda this time, we have the third reading of the policy that we talked about previously. And that would be adopted tonight as revised. And we have the second reading for the textbook. So, can I have motions to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to our first opportunity for community participation. And first on the agenda,
First time we have a board follow-up.
board follow-up.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. First on the agenda for community participation is board follow-up. And we do have a list of questions, and we can open that up in a minute. I have 2 follow-ups from the board meeting from last time. And the first one is, we did have a question from a community member about whether or not you were required to give your name when you talked. And I got answers from a couple of different sources, and the first source was NISBA, and NISBA referred me to 2 places, to our district's legal counsel, as well as to just a position by a gentleman named Robert Freeman, who's the executive director and the person that's in charge of the open meetings law. And his wasn't exactly clear, but basically, I think his opinion says that it's not contrary to law to include speakers' names, but there would be situations where you might not want to do that, where it would be harmful to the speaker. For instance, he cited in the case of battered women or something like that. The original question was asked because people didn't want to be Googled, and the issue there was that a lot of districts do verbatim minutes, and they didn't want verbatim quotes to be associated with them at an open meeting. We don't do verbatim minutes.
I think educational officers are not supposed to.
Okay. We do kind of general content minutes. We did run it by our attorney, and why don't you,
Sure.
you're the one that talked to himself.
Sure. Our BOCES attorney indicated that the board has the prerogative to have people state their names and even as far as where they live. And the position was, because you are not obligated to have people speak at a public meeting, you certainly can put limitations on when they speak. The example that was given is that because meetings are open to the public, for someone to address, and meaning the general public, they don't have to live in district, for someone to address the board and the board to take the appropriate action, it would behoove the board to kind of know where they live. For example, a busing issue. If you don't live in the district and you have issues regarding our transportation drop-off, well, if we don't drop off to you, like, where does that fall in the priority of the board and the administration to take action? So that was the summary of the conversation. So the board can put limitations on, or ask people to state their name and their address.
And I think the way we worded that protocol that you just approved is a reasonable way to ask people to do things.
I mean, there was a time where people were asked to actually sign in and
Yeah.
wait their name
A lot of boards
before
do
they
that.
were to participate.
A lot of boards do that.
I know that just kind of fell away because it just wasn't really, I mean, I kind of came in when that was still going on.
Yeah.
Then the staff
Okay.
So we just start doing it.
I mean, I know as a participant, it was hard for me walking in,
Yeah.
not knowing that I was going to have a question. Then in the middle of the meeting, I had to look at you and say, do I need to sign in because I have a question?
Right.
And so, I mean, I just don't know if there's any value or lack of value in that. That was the only reason I'm raising the question.
If it were a special, I mean, the thing that comes to mind for me is when there was a discussion on the merger. You know, that was kind of a special situation, and I'm not sure if I think people were asked to sign in there, but you had a special situation where there were lots of people talking. You could change the protocols for any particular meeting just by making a motion at the beginning of the meeting. But
Just help me.
yeah, just help matters. I mean, if you ask people to sign in with what they're going to talk about at the beginning of the meeting, it does limit people thinking during the meeting of things that they might want to bring up. So,
Yeah.
so
So now it states that the board has asked that they stay as a board. But they don't have to.
From my
That's right.
perspective, it helps us to understand the questioner's perspective, to know who they are and where they're coming from. So, I mean, that's my thought on it, but.
Well,
obviously
and
that's
sometimes
what it is.
questions are asked that pertain to a particular individual, and you want to get back to that particular individual too. So, I think we have a good middle ground there. And the other question that the other follow-up was one that happened right after the board meeting, that several of us were involved in it, and as well as several people from the audience, and it was the second time it came up. So there was a question about possibly increasing the number of board members. And the discussion was if the board wanted to become more active or looking at what other boards do. So I just looked that up. We're a central school district. We can have 5, 7, or 9. The procedure for doing that would be a petition that would then put a proposition on the ballot. And we would have to have 25 signatures or 5% of those voting in the last election. And for us, that would be about 87 people, whichever of those is greater. So that would be about 87. And then there are procedures afterwards for if that passes, then we could deal with that before the reorganization meeting. But that's just how. So, and then Paul came up with. Thank you very much for doing it too. He came up with a list of questions that have been asked at previous board meetings. We should give some thought to how we're going to deal with them. So.
And what was interesting is how many times that I know in all goodwill, we heard the question, we said, yeah, we need to look at that or we'll get back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you see everybody furiously scribble something down, and by the next month, it's gone. And one of the examples was Travis actually asked the question back in September, October, about all-day pre-K. And you could see in the video 2 or 3 of us writing down notes about that, and I don't think we've ever discussed it since. So I just think it'll be a good way to have that included in the agenda. It's almost like a to-do list or a go back and check, just make sure that we check on
Yes,
those things.
that's a good idea.
This is a fairly extensive list. We should think of how we want to maybe go about doing that or not. But
I counted, I
just want
think that there are 23 questions on this list. Some of them I think were answered.
some were there were some that were answered right then meeting. I did put them on.
Yeah.
And
one
some
was-
were kind of maybe they were, maybe
Yeah,
they weren't.
maybe they
I
were.
wasn't going to make the
I thought the
judgment
same
call.
thing. And one of them was a question from me, so we can cross that sucker off. I think I could find that one out. So that's really not that many. I mean, if all of us took 6.
So can we kind of bring this document into, or I mean, should we make this document
Part
submit
of
it
our
into?
follow-up next time.
Well, we should
Or
submit it into the board
agenda.
doc, so it's into the agenda.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So
So
how,
that when you want in the board agenda next month.
yes.
Yeah, and
And it would go under 5.1.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we can sign who gets one. So, Okay.
And can we put this as part of this month's minutes?
No, because it's after you've already attended.
Yep,
Okay,
so we can go in for next month.
okay.
Do you want to work on it between now and next month?
Yeah.
And work on the questions, so,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, I also don't want to wait another month before we answer it.
No, that's what I
Right,
mean,
Yeah, if
so-
we assign each of us, a certain number of them, and then it's each of our responsibility to come up with what the answer to that is, or if we can, or that it's something that's really going to require discussion, and that may be the answer, we need to discuss this, we need to
You can have to
decide.
usually take 6 and then
Right.
that special meeting, you get the other thing done. and
I haven't really had a chance to look at this. It's some, I mean, just what I've seen, it's lumpable.
yeah, it is.
I mean, can we lump
It is.
instead of just saying everybody take 6? Can we lump? I mean, there's eSpark, there's scheduling questions, which, I mean, the all-day pre-K, the
Questions about the strategic plan?
And some aren't questions, they're kind of decide or discuss with
So do you want to maybe decide informally who's going to do? I don't think it's really an agenda item right now, though. It's not in the minutes, but it will be next time, and we can keep them.
but if we're gonna divvy it up, we need to do
We
it
can
now,
divvy it
because
up.
we can't do it.
Okay, do you want to go first 6, second 6,
Yeah, let's just do
third
that.
6,
Yeah.
fourth, fifth?
Okay.
Okay.
Which ones did I have?
First.
First, yeah. I was looking down, I didn't see that.
And whoever got mine, cross it off. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I put, there was one from Michelle and one from you, because you guys asked the question during the community participation, but it was a question that we didn't have the answer to at that
Yes.
time.
So let's follow up
So-
on who I get
We
in
could,
that
but I
question.
think I we answered mine since anyway, so. Are we good with that? Okay, that's good. Okay, so that brings us to our first opportunity for our public participation. And I will read the protocols at this time before I invite people up. So the protocols are, the meeting will be videotaped. A Board of Education meeting is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting. Anyone wishing to address the board may do so during one of the 2 public comment periods, and the board will determine whether to respond at that time or to defer the issues raised to a later time. Anyone addressing the board is asked to state his or her name and use the microphones provided for audience members so that those unable to attend meetings will be able to hear what transpired. All speakers are to conduct themselves in a civil manner. The board will not permit discussions of individual district personnel or students in public sessions. The board asks each speaker to be concise and reserves the right to limit the amount of time for each speaker to 3 minutes. Any questions should be directed to the board, not to administrators or other staff members, and it is up to the board to determine what is appropriate to discuss and distribute at its meetings. So if you would like to address the board, please approach the podium.
Hi everyone, Travis James. Where else are here? Just a quick note on the, I don't care stating my name, but you mentioned something interesting about you don't do verbatim minutes as far as asking somebody's name, but I will note that you broadcast the videos
I know.
to the public, so
We do.
it's kind of the
And
same thing there.
I was thinking the same
The
thing.
YouTube is more accessible
I
than
think
somebody
the
going
issue,
to.
the issue in that email that I was referring to was that you wouldn't you wouldn't be able to Google somebody to do the video.
I just wanted to bring that up
Yep,
because
and
I didn't
thought
figure
the
that
same
out.
thing.
Paul, thanks too. So you guys have 23 unanswered questions. I'm sure about 15 are probably from me.
There's only 3.
Actually, I was gonna say, you're
Really?
not, yeah. Congratulations.
Anyway, I thought I had that for you.
It's still maybe the top.
Maybe. And Paul, you're beating me to it here. I was going to ask a question about full-day pre-K. So why don't I talk about that? Yeah, I did ask you that question in September, and Terry, you did say that you were going to look into it. I'm not sure if you did it all. I know it might seem like I'm beating the bushes in terms of pre-K. Talk about it a lot. But this question is actually separate from my previous inquiries about universal pre-K arrangements, as those issues had to deal with building use by outside groups. So back to the subject of full-day pre-K. My point is this. I think it would be wise to look into the numbers on it. What doing so would entail as far as staffing, cost, opinions of our staff and outside professionals as to the benefits of doing so, and how it would affect any future collaborating agency partnerships. I know it would cost lots of money, and yes, I'm typically the one that's asking for fiscal responsibility, but I truly think that it's worth doing the research as to what it would take to offer full-day pre-K here before completely dismissing the idea. Having that information might be helpful for your strategic planning committee as well. It also likely, it would also likely make a current part-time employee a full-time employee, and I can assure you that will make many people happy, as that issue of finding ways to make part-time employees full-day here has been talked about quite a bit in recent meetings. Full-day pre-K might also tackle some hurdles that got us to being designated a focus district. And last, I don't know how true this is, but in theory, students that experience full-day pre-K as opposed to half-day might require less support services in the future, which in turn saves a little bit of money. So I ask you to just, you or the administration, just look into it, see what it would cost. So if it ever comes up in discussion, you know, can we afford it? Yes, because we've looked into it. So that's that. The last thing real quick is, can you give us any update on the 21st Century Grant that we and 3 other schools together applied for? Do we know like a date when we might hear something about it?
The answer is, I can tell you, the superintendent from Sherburne Earlville called me and we're playing phone tag, and it's about 2 components of the grant, but I don't know anything other than that. The initial information that we got was late spring, so I don't know anything other than that. I do look forward to speaking to him to find out what it is he wants to talk to me about, because he did mention it was about the grant. So that's...
So you said probably late spring, we'd know yes or no.
That's when, but late spring from state education department, which could mean...
That's like my 15 minutes. All right, thanks, Chris.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else at this time?
I know that Hope Hanson, and I know Ferdinand has asked before about you guys speaking up, but I could only hear bits and pieces of everything that was being said. So I don't know if a microphone there will help or what, but I don't know. Raise your hand if you heard what they said, because you really cannot hear.
Okay.
If we can turn off the blower at least too.
You really can't hear what you're saying. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So just from the audience, was it better downstairs? Or not? I mean, it's
my-
more comfortable up here?
My bigger question was,
Space-wise?
We can
If
take
you
the
could turn the
chairs
blower
down.
off, it would be better.
At one point, you were using microphones. I don't know why that stopped.
I mean, we can get a tabletop mic.
Yeah, but if there's no speaker for it, it
No,
doesn't
that-
matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Get the 2, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not expensive.
Yeah.
There's 2 ways to deal with this. You can buy a microphone set up and we speak from it. We don't have that. What we did when we were downstairs, we had the jack and we would be able to just plug in a microphone in the elementary library, which we don't have the capacity to do up here. Up here we have this one mic, and that's kind of how it works. So we go out and buy a microphone. We went out and bought a camera that kind of upgrades our ability for people to hear us on video. So that's why the quality of the videos are better, but you know, we did not go out and buy a microphone for this venue.
Right. And the multi-microphone system that you would really need for this venue is on the order of $5,000, which
But
is
you don't
why
really
it
need
has
that.
not been.
You could have a tabletop full-range microphone. I mean, this is a small gathering, a small group, you'd only need the 1 maybe 2. It wouldn't be that expensive.
Yes.
That's cheap.
Yeah. Turn the blower off. I think that would
It
work.
would be
cheap.
much cheaper.
We'll figure it out.
That would work.
Might be harder to do.
I was just gonna say, they may know how to do it.
that you can lift up so you can shoot?
No, don't.
No, don't get it.
I think you could also rearrange the tables
Not
and
tonight,
chairs.
folks. The
Yeah,
ball is
but-
not going off. Please.
Yeah.
You can move your tables back and arrange the chairs kind of in a little circle.
Yeah, this is more of a galley than downstairs.
Chairs are more comfortable though.
So it is better, is what you're
We
saying.
can take the chairs downstairs, that's the other option we talked about doing that. Okay, if there are no other people approaching at this moment, we
Thank
do
you.
have teacher presentation. Pat Rowland and Sharon Follett are going to share their summer curriculum project with us.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Follett, a fourth grade teacher.
And I'm Pat Rowland, the other half. Last year we got new editions of the reading units of study by Lucy Calkins. And in them they had what are called the learning progressions. And we wanted to take a little time last summer to deepen our understanding of these learning progressions and how to use them in the classroom setting.
So, as Pat said, in the newest edition of the Lucy Calkins units of study in reading, the learning progressions give us a linear look through grade level proficiencies, outlining desired student growth in specific reading skills, expectations for fourth grade level as well as the prior grade level and the grade following, assist students in self-assessing in order to locate their current levels of work and identify their next steps. This is an example of one page of a learning progression for narrative reading for analytical skills. This page is specifically skills that you would hope a fourth grader would achieve in analyzing author's craft, analyzing perspective, critical reading, and questioning the text. And there are specific reading behaviors described, and it helps fourth graders to see exactly what they should be achieving at this level.
Okay, this is an example of the progression between third and fifth, so that students can see where they fall within the progressions. This is for interpretive reading, and it shows the reading proficiencies for determining themes, as you can see on the left there. Students use these charts to locate their current level and set goals in moving towards the next level.
So our goals for the summer project were to compile the learning progressions from each unit and compare the overarching repetitive themes. As in assessment, we kept in mind the parameters of each unit and how they related to the learning progressions, taking a look at pre-assessments and post-assessments as part of that. And in application, we considered various ways on how to incorporate the learning progressions as part of their daily reading and applying those skills in each particular unit. So students demonstrate their levels of proficiencies in the learning progressions through individual conferring, through small group reading instruction, classroom discussions, and self-reflection.
This slide, you can just see our 4 units of reading units. And within each of these units, when we looked into the learning progressions, it was divided into 3 major categories, and that was literal comprehension, interpretive, and analytical.
And implementing these learning progressions. As we use them, they help students work on specific skills. They're perfect for monitoring the progress towards students setting their own reading goals, and also they see from level to level how they are doing, if they're moving forward and growing as a reader. And as teachers, it helps us drive our instruction by showing us the path along which readers progress and develop. It is a perfect assessment tool, as I said earlier, to confer with, to use in small group instruction to see exactly where different students are. We can look at their written responses to what they have read and compare those to the learning progressions to see if they are demonstrating growth. And it allows us to connect the teaching we do in one part of our curriculum with others. So it is reading skills, but we use them across all the curriculums.
This is just an example. Within each unit, there are skills for the students to use in the reading, and this shows how to build an interpretation in the learning progressions, and it's an anchor chart. So these remain on the wall while we go through the units. This is an example of student work, if you can see it, using the skills from the reading workshop from the anchor charts. And this student is demonstrating their understanding of character development in their reading response notebook. Using this alongside the progression, students and teachers can assess current levels of performance. This helps the teacher to drive instruction and help students establish future goals. And this is really good for conferring with the students. You can either sit and talk with them, or you can respond likewise in their reading notebooks.
So examples of nonfiction, this is an anchor chart that we would have displayed in the classroom. Each of these teaching points has been taught, and then it is available for students to guide them in reading nonfiction. And then an example, as students read nonfiction texts, they are noticing and looking for text features such as labels and captions and illustrations. They also are looking at the text to see what is the structure of it. Is it written as a compare-contrast piece? Is it cause and effect, problem solution? And then apply all of those nonfiction reading in a social studies text. So this is an example of just where a student has coded and highlighted to determine what information here is important, and fourth graders do love to highlight.
College students.
But then, taking it to the next step is graphic organizers, where, categories of what are the natural resources, what are the things the men, the women, the children are responsible for in the Native American way of life.
Okay, this is another example of a anchor chart, and we did this recently in class. It's with a research project, and it was on weather-related things, volcanoes and tornadoes, things like that. And these are teaching points that help them in their research, so they would always refer back to this. And they determine, while doing this, you can see they determine important information while they're taking notes. This shows the student notes. You can see a list of vocabulary words, and on the learning progression to the right there, it says, as I read about a topic, I keep track of the new words the text is teaching me, the ones that seem most important, and use them to teach others about the topic. So they are referring to these charts while they're doing the research, along with the anchor chart, which coordinates with the learning progressions.
And another example is a student reading about staying safe in a flood. So they've listed important preparations and safety tips, referenced page numbers along the left-hand column. And this is them showing their ability to summarize the text that they are reading, pulling out the main idea and supporting details as they move forward in their research.
Okay. Kevin, could you click on that video, just pull the pointer up there? This is a video of two students that did finish a volcano project, and they're presenting. Oh, you can push that. Presenting right now.
My name is Madison. My name is Reagan. In reading, we did research reports. Ours was on volcanoes. When reading, we noticed subtopics that came up a lot. Then we separated the subtopics and wrote a ton of notes on all of the subtopics. Next, we planned a poster to present all of our classmates. We got all the materials we needed and made our poster. Lastly, we planned who would say what when we presented it. Here are a few. What is a volcano? A volcano is a mountain full of liquid called lava. Lava is hot liquid that spills out of a volcano in a bubbling molasses way. Damage. Volcanoes can cause a ton of damage, such as landslides, fire, poisonous gases. Here's a picture of all the people wearing masks because the poisonous gases can really hurt them. It also can cause heavy ash, can cause roofs to collapse. Ash destroys crops, causing food shortages. Underwater volcanoes can cause tidal waves or tsunamis. Did you know that volcano can also cause benefits too? Here are a few. Heat from volcanoes can make energy. Volcanic pumice is sometimes used by dentists to clean teeth, and hardened lava is sometimes used to make roads. Now, Mount St. Helens was definitely not a benefit. It erupted May 18, 1980, in Washington State. It's the largest in recent U.S. history. Here's a picture. Thank you for watching.
So you can X that out and go back to the, yeah.
So in conclusion, students as well as we as teachers have experienced the benefits of using the learning progressions. Students are more aware of their direction as a learner and know what skills they should be consistently using and what skills they are working on mastering. So we have deepened our understanding and ability to guide students toward more meaningful goal setting, helping them to become more responsible and self-reflective, as well as successful independent readers. Thank you.
On the first item on the personnel agenda is a motion to approve Corinne Sila and Daniel Aarons to the substitute list as recommended by the secondary principal and the superintendent.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? And we had a discussion about a full-time director of pupil personnel.
Yeah. So as we are starting the budget cycle, we currently have a part-time director of PPS in charge of special education and all other student-related services. I wanted to have the discussion with the board in public forum just so we're not guessing whether or not we should replace it, but that there is conversation around it. I am hesitant always to increase administrators. However, this was a position that was full-time administrator for a long time, and we had a retirement. And based on that retirement, we brought in Mr. Bragan, who has done this job before, and for part-time. As we've been assessing the special education department, and they're making a lot of progress, it seems that for us to kind of move where we need to go, it would need a full-time position. So one of the recommendations was that we have a full-time PPS director or special education director. So putting it up for discussion now, and for the board to kind of weigh in. And the salary, the package would be about $80,000 total.
And right now
But right now, we're no benefits and $30,000 as the person doesn't need benefits, and there's a cap anyway on what they can make. So it's kind of structured that way, and it for this particular individual.
So moving part-time to full-time would provide what that we don't have?
Well, I think it would provide, so it's, for me, it's not necessarily a matter of full-time versus part-time. You have to have the right person in the position in order for it to work well. And so assuming that you go through a very good hiring process and you put the right person in there, what that person, I would expect them to do is to be able to provide professional development, coordinate the many things that fall under special education, in addition to making sure that our placements in and out of districts are proper, that we're going through the proper protocol, creating the proper protocols and procedures for in district, out of district, making sure that everyone is clear on all things related to students with special needs and 504s. And right now, you know, it's 2 days a week, and that's where we are. So that would be an overview. Yeah.
So,
And the
I'm not
principals,
talking
feel
about
free
anybody else to hear, but yeah.
Yeah.
So from the student perspective, it would provide improved professional development, so the teachers would have more training, and getting continued training. So from the student benefit standpoint, the meeting, 504s, IEPs, CSEs, what the kids really need would theoretically be more consistent.
It would definitely be more consistent on a full-time basis. You would also be able to create plans and targets and goals.
Okay.
As it stands right now, it's maintenance.
Okay.
2 days a week is a maintenance job. Make sure things, but I will say, because of the person who's there who has that level of experience and knows how to engage the teachers well, we're actually accomplishing good things. Good things are happening. And I don't want to kind of paint a dreary picture, but moving forward, I think that's something that we have to consider. Like, are we at max now? I wouldn't be able to say that to this board or to the community in terms of making sure that people have the support that they need, that the resources are in place, and yeah.
And other school districts around our area who are like us, what do they do? Do they have a full-time person like we have had? Do they do, I mean, where does that fall?
I don't have that information. I actually did that study last year, and I have it in my office.
I think some of them are sharing, aren't they?
I was going to ask, that was my next question.
Right.
This might be an opportunity
It very well
to
could
go
be.
through too.
Um,
That would still give us another half day.
Right. We do have a psychologist who can do CSEs. So I would have to look into I have it in my office, I'd have to look into that and see what our neighbors are doing, because when we went from full-time to part-time, if you recall, the person left mid-year, which is not an ideal time to hire. But then when we were able to get the current part-time PPS director and all of that experience and knowledge, and that it was, from my point of view, better to go ahead and bring this person in and save some money and be able to be a good resource for us. So I can find out.
About shared.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just sort of, so I'd like,
See what the
our first priority is students, and what's this going to do for students? My second thought is teachers. And so again, this is providing the teachers with support and development and all of those things. And then my third thought is fiscal and financially. I mean, there is a financial impact here to the district, to the budget, to the community, and all of those, which is not insignificant. I guess my question then, I mean, you're talking about development. Is any of that financial impact going to be, I mean, would we have been bringing people in for development that we would have been paying that this person would then be able to do? Would that financial impact be offset by savings on that front?
Right. If you hire the right person, they would be expected to be able to deliver that quality, that level of professional development.
Right.
Right.
So some of that cost
Right.
would be offset by money that would have been spent
On professional development, definitely.
Is that quantifiable? I mean, I don't
Not
necessarily expect it off the cuff, but
Excluding grants, you would look at what we have done traditionally and what we've allocated for professional development, or what our professionals have done in terms of professional development.
specifically CSE.
Specifically our special education teachers. This year is a little different because we had grant money. Right.
You said that mid-year was not a time to look for an individual for this type of position. When is the ideal time,
Right.
and what's our time frame for this?
In our business, the ideal time for hiring any professional, well, with the exception of the superintendent, is March, April. And to appoint, ideally, at the May or June board meeting. That's the ideal hiring season for us. And everyone else, superintendent, probably starts around Christmas.
Have you had input from teachers about this? Whether they feel the need, what they're missing, and just direct input from teachers?
By way of the current
principal?
PPS director,
Okay.
you're right, who spends an awful lot of time. I mean, in my mind, ideally, if we can keep him, but I don't know that that's a possibility. But I'll explore it.
Any other questions right now? Okay, brings us to the Committee on Special Education recommendations. Can I have motions to approve the recommendation of the committees on special education and preschool special education?
Second.
Any discussion would happen in executive session? All in favor? And we had another discussion about our technology finance package.
So, we can post this tomorrow. I got it from the MORIC today. And I'll walk you through what it is we have in front of you. And for anyone who's looking along, what is posted online is something that we've discussed before, which is
Online is A, right?
which is online as A, and that is a proposal for $256,000 in infrastructure upgrade.
Can I ask a question right at this point?
Of course.
When I look at that number and I look at our, we're about 58% able. So that brings that down to 127.5, right around there. Is that thinking about it in the right way? And I know it's,
Over the course of
Over
the
the
4
course of 4
years, the
years.
net cost to the district, yes.
okay,
But
that's what I was asking. I know the first year that's the most stressful year in terms of that budget, but just the net, really, what we're talking about is about 127.5. It's not 256.
Right.
Right.
So, and the breakdown that's on board docs now, the one that's on board docs now is the one from last time, which is A.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Which is what she presented at the last meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Now I'm
Got
going
it.
to walk you through what's in front of you.
Yep.
The cover page is for the purposes of this conversation, there's proposal A and there's proposal B. Proposal A is what the community has seen and what is industry standard to prepare us for the reality and the future. So it allows for replacement of current infrastructure, wireless access points, fiber, and UPS closet backups. It also allows for the addition of wireless APs to meet the industry standard of an AP is access point. One access point per classroom in order to increase wireless coverage throughout the building and prepare the district for future technology initiatives. That includes the mandated computer-based testing. Okay. So one of the things that I discussed with at least one of you is the notion that they only proposed one thing. And the one thing is the industry standard. So why didn't they propose something lower than industry standard? Well, I didn't ask them to. And I didn't ask them to go give us the platinum package either. So what I did do is say, okay, could you do me a favor and work up a plan that is other than industry standard? Go lower than industry standard. And the base point was, why don't you go with the number of access points that we currently have, which is 38. So option A is 78 access points, and option B is 38, which is what we have. It allows for replacement of current infrastructure, wireless APs, fiber, and UPS closet backup. There would be no additional wireless coverage that would meet industry standard or prepare the district for future instructional technology initiatives. The price difference is $43,039.36. So not having another basis to say, give me something that's below industry standard, is give me what we have. So you can try and look at apples to apples and see kind of what makes sense for the district going forward. So part A is, what do we want or need in order to move forward? And the second part of the conversation is, how do you pay for it? So that's where we are, and that's where the discussion can start.
I'm just trying to do a quick
Huge
math
difference.
on how that breaks
Yeah.
down too, so I will do that for you.
Okay.
You
well,
may- you think I'm gonna
looking
try to
at-
do that.
I'm looking at the difference in price compared to the difference in access points. And the price difference, when you look at the 58%, isn't that much, but it's a huge difference in access. It's huge, 40.
This is over 5 years, right?
4, right?
4 years.
Four?
But
Over 4.
It's just at first glance, if I'm,
Okay,
you
I'm
save
sorry.
about $6,000 in the RIC services. If you go back to that
Okay,
spreadsheet,
yeah.
you kind of correlate the two, you'd save $6,000 in year one for the RIC services. And I think your down payment and your annual installment would be about $8,000 less.
So
So it's $14,000
Right.
as far as the budgetary impact for next year.
over 4 years, 14,000, really ever.
Well, so,
Now, the RIC, the
Yeah,
first
not
14 in
really
year
over 4
one and
years.
then
Year one would be
8,000.
the difference.
so if I've got this right, it says 5487, 57 plus the RIC cost, which is 11,884 plus 25. So the first year would be, I'm gonna write on this, okay?
Yep.
Would be 62,371.82 as opposed to 74.
746.
So it's about 12,000 that first year that we would save. And then the second year, why is that deduction the first year more?
Because you have to pay for the work services up front.
Right, but
So-
Matt, this minus 43 as opposed to minus 32, why is that first year?
Because you're being aided on the 74,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
not-
okay, I got it.
Not the 56.
So,
We can have the RIC provide us with
Another
a
This-
spreadsheet
Yeah.
that would coincide with option B if that was.
That would help.
I would be interested to see what the technology committee has to say.
Yeah, I
about
would
these.
too.
I'd
I wrote that
also
down
be
too.
interested to see what the teachers have to say about the current access points, and have them talk to the technology committee about it, and see what that does wirelessly. Is that change a change that the teachers are able to function with, or is that something that they're not? Are they currently not functioning wirelessly? Is it because of all the other issues that we have, or is it because of the access points? So I think that's a discussion that the technology committee really needs to have. From what I hear, they meet next week. But I think that we really need to get them to really dig into things other than baseline, do you think we should finance this way, or do you think we should finance that way? I think they need to be digging into the meat of it and deciding, giving us a direction of A or B and why. Or if you do A, this is what you get, and if you do B, this is what you get. I think that's why we have that committee, and I think it's a big cost difference, but is it something, is the access points worth the cost, or is it not? But I think that's what that committee is for, and that we should be using it for. So I guess I personally would say here to the technology committee, and I'd like to hear back from them next week.
When do we need to make this decision as far as budgeting and as far as committing and as far as?
You do the budget
Well,
piece.
I
and
mean,
I'll do the other piece.
budget-wise, the budget has to be adopted by, I think it's the third week of April. You can decide it after the
Right.
fact, but it won't be budgeted, so ideally.
Right,
in
no, that's my
world, I
question.
want it
So
done.
So by the next
Next board meeting.
by April 1st, before the next board meeting. And that next board meeting is going to be a shorthanded board meeting.
It's like April 25th.
Well, we actually
Oh,
have
there's a second meeting, that's
we have a
the second.
special meeting tentatively scheduled for preliminary budget hearing because our next board meeting is after the deadline for the property tax card being submitted, so.
It's like April 12th, that's the one, it's a Tuesday, and that's the one that got moved to a Tuesday night, right?
What's the date for the preliminary budget?
There's a budget meeting on the 11th, and then
April 11th is when it's tentatively scheduled.
and then
What
the
night
board
is
meeting
that?
is the 25th. They're both Tuesdays.
25th is
I mean, I can't come on Tuesdays.
The 25th is because of BOCES.
Okay, so it's the 25th is the BOCES one, okay.
That's the annual budget meeting.
And that one can't be moved.
We all have all 9 components filled with the meet on the same day. We get the following results from the state of I'm not here.
If that falls,
So can we
if our
move it
regular meeting falls
11th?
before the deadline to for the budget to be adopted, that's beneficial to us, but because it's not, we had to schedule another meeting.
So that's what the 11th meeting is.
Correct, tentatively.
But if
So,
it's
we Tuesday, yeah, I mean, you can't be here, I can't be here on Tuesday nights.
I can
That's
be
the
here
week
for
you're
the-
traveling,
no,
right? No,
the
that's
other
not.
one.
The
Stephanie
25th
can't
you're
be
traveling.
here.
Okay.
Stephanie's done.
But that meeting that's tentatively scheduled the 11th, if it can't be on Tuesday, it probably needs to be that week because the
It's
following
fine.
week is break.
Could it be Thursday, the 13th? How's that? You're not here? How about Monday?
We adopt this budget calendar early in the
Yeah,
fall,
I know.
so it's flexible.
The other thing about the special meeting for the BOCES vote is that I seem to remember one year, we all gathered at 7 in the morning and just did that, a special meeting. So we don't have to, I mean, we do have to
You
do.
have to have a special meeting or a regular meeting.
Right, we do have to do that one item, and that was a 10-minute meeting, so we don't really have to have a full meeting on that day. We can do that at a different
It was
time.
7 a.m.
And do that BOCES, and then do the regular board meeting. But you can't come on the 13th?
You really can't.
What about that week? Is there?
I can come
how about
Monday.
Monday the 10th for everybody?
I've got so many meetings down now. Yeah, we've got 10, 11, 13, 25th. We need to at some point say which ones are we having.
No, we're looking at.
We're looking at the 10th.
We'd be moving the
Just
11th.
one,
We'd
yeah,
be
just
moving the one,
one meeting.
we'd be moving the budget, preliminary budget hearing from the 11th to the 10th.
What time?
What time?
6 o'clock.
It's usually earlier, isn't it?
I can't do earlier.
Okay,
I'm fine
what
with
can
6.
you do?
6.
Would 6 o'clock work for everybody Monday the 10th?
So that'll be our budget meeting?
Preliminary budget meeting.
Well, when are you gonna have your regular meeting? Are you gonna keep that on the 23rd?
So we had to.
No.
You can
You have to
have,
have a
we typically what we do is have our regular meeting on the same day that BOCES has to have, all of us 90 county districts have a meeting. Because the board doesn't like to have 2 meetings in a month, so we always move that meeting, April meeting to whatever BOCES holds their annual meeting.
Let's keep it on the 25th.
Yeah.
Okay, so the regular meeting's on the 25th.
Yeah,
And that's the one you can't be
Preliminary's
at.
on the 10th.
So
Okay.
So
you have to be here.
You have to be here.
Sorry.
I'll
All right,
update the
no,
budget
that's
calendar. for
good.
you.
So we are the 11th and the 25th.
No, the 10th and the
The
25th.
10th and the 25th, sorry.
All at 6 o'clock.
All at 6 o'clock. Good.
So the 11th is gone.
The 11th is gone.
Just made that go away.
Good,
Good.
that is?
I'm like busy all day tonight, but that's good. Okay. Are we good for that? Okay, so,
So-
go ahead.
So the next part is, and it's not relevant at this point because we don't know what we want, right? So you can't talk about smart schools until you know what it is that you want to finance, because that's a whole process. So right now, we're not clear on what it is that the district wants to do. And I would invite everyone, and particularly people who are watching the video and the board, where do you want to be in technology? A, when we open school in September, or not, because going smart schools won't do that. And where do you want our teachers to be 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line in terms of technology? And those are really big idea questions. And what we do now will impact where we are going to be in the future. So the 15th is the next technology meeting.
March 15th?
Yeah, next week. Right. And more to come. But I wanted to have that conversation here.
Can we get a notification from, like a write-up from that meeting the next day? Can they?
I don't see why
take
not.
minutes?
Or could we have
At least for the-
somebody from the Board of Service?
Is there anyone on that? There's no one.
There are spouses, of course.
Yes, there are 2 spouses.
We could get information that way.
But that's not official minutes. It's
No,
not.
I mean, we could have a board member observe. Do you know what time that meeting is?
Not off the top of my head.
5 o'clock.
I was just gonna say, it's probably on my calendar.
I can't do 5. Can anybody be there at 5 and watch the
Can
meeting?
we just ask them to give us a report? I mean,
You certainly
they're
can.
everybody.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ask them.
Give
tell
us
us what-
minutes.
Well, so is Jen in charge of that committee?
Yeah.
We can ask her to provide
Yep.
Okay.
minutes. And do we have a sense now of what the overall staff feel of the access points is?
If you recall,
It's hard. I do recall.
maybe October board meeting.
Yeah. that's
You
what
heard
I'm
from
going-
the staff regarding
They weren't
technology.
That's what I'm
happy.
going back to.
Okay.
But is it the access points? I'm looking to you guys now, sorry. But is it the access points or is it that the
Switches.
hardware and switches and everything else is falling apart? So if the wireless, if everything else was good, is the wireless okay? Could they plug into certain spots and be okay? Do they need the wireless feeds? That's the part I don't understand. I'm plugged into a computer. My computer stays stationary all day, so I don't need a wireless spot for my job. Other people do, and I get that. But that's what I'm trying to figure out is that savings, the dollar savings, a savings that is going to hinder us, or is it possible that it won't hinder us because there's abilities to do things plugged in, and now I can look out further, and I don't know, like, that's what
I can tell you though,
that's what I'd like.
everything in technology is becoming more and more mobile,
Yeah.
and it's becoming wireless based. I mean, that's how even our devices are speaking to each other is all wireless.
Especially schools.
So even if today we could plug in and it would get us by, that's short term.
And see, that's what I haven't known, and I think that's what's important is that $36,000 really a savings or is it a hindering thing? I mean, if we're going to do this, are we gonna bite the bullet or are we not? I guess it's
Over 4 years, if my math is right, over 4 years, you're saving $2,000 a year.
14,000 total, I thought, over
So,
4 years.
well,
No, that's what it is.
I mean, because it's aidable, and so the
Yeah,
math gets messy, but not terribly messy, but if I'm doing the math right, you're saving $2,000 a year to sacrifice.
Then to me,
Those-
that doesn't sound like it's worth it.
Right.
So that's what I
Yeah.
needed,
Yeah.
is that information, and which we weren't getting from the MORIC. We were just handed one thing and saying, here, this is what we're gonna do. And it wasn't explaining that piece of it. So I think that right there is enough for me to feel better about keeping it at 78. But without that information and without everybody understanding that, it looks like a big number to me.
Because it's not, it doesn't have the A piece, that's right.
So,
We'll have a report from the tech committee, and,
It's still worth asking the question.
It is, yeah. Okay, any more discussion about that, the technology package? Okay, that moves us,
And we can just say one more thing about technology, just to keep it on the radar screen. I know it's in one of the questions, but one of the things that was brought up in that October meeting from teachers over and over again was also their own hardware, laptops, tablets, whatever. So that, we can't leave that off the radar while we
No,
look
we
at
can't.
the infrastructure.
the other thing that we can't leave off the radar is.
What was that, Paul? I'm sorry.
The
Hardware.
hardware,
Hardware.
teachers,
Oh.
computers.
this doesn't involve any hardware.
Right.
Well, the other thing that we can't leave off the radar is the smart schools money. You know, I know that there are problems statewide with getting the money back and having to pay up front and a year to get plans approved, but that money's there. And so we need to maybe talk to the technology committee about that too. You know, where are we in terms of being able to put a proposal in for maybe that kind of hardware to get that smart schools money. It doesn't, I don't think it runs out.
It's not, we met last
we
week
can-
with the smart, we met with a small committee, and really, what happens in the budget for next year is going to automatically trigger where we're going first and foremost with smart schools.
Okay.
Can you explain that more, or?
If the infrastructure upgrades take place through the budget process, which I'm advocating for, which
Right.
hopefully we can pull off,
Right,
then that frees up more money in the smart schools avenue for hardware,
for other things. Okay.
building security,
So-
for other things.
But if we need them, we should get that going down the pipeline, since it's gonna take a long time to get approval.
So who does that?
We have, there are a whole list of things that have to happen in order to get the smart schools done.
But that's part of what the technology committee was to be
That's right.
addressing as well, correct?
That's right.
Helping to prioritize those things and helping to lay those things out. And again, which Michelle brought up at the beginning, sort of laying a technology turnover plan for that hardware. And again, I guess my question, thinking about that is, you know, you've got the bus turnover plan, you've got the bus turnover plan for a reason, because it saves money to turn the buses over the way you do, and that makes sense to me. Is there an equivalent of that in technology turnover? I don't know the answer to that, but the question that I'm throwing out, but I don't expect an answer to. But it's just, you know, I don't know if there's an answer.
But that's one to
But-
put to the technology committee.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
perfect question.
That's for a task for them. Okay, any other? Okay, that brings us to our follow-up on our board workshop on February the 16th. We have several items to talk about under that. One of the things that we talked about at that meeting was the formation of an advisory board committee. Paul and I had a discussion about that when we talked about policy. We worked on the general policy on board committees, but we thought we would bring that back and throw it out to the group first. Just in terms of what would be the job of that committee. That was our point that we.
And the original proposal for that committee was the committee that would be a board member,
Or a couple board members, everybody, the board members, administration,
Teachers,
and
staff,
from
or-
different level.
yeah,
Different
faculty,
levels,
staff,
right.
and that was the one that even included potentially family or parents and that kind of stuff, right? Is that the committee that potentially included that?
Those advisory committees are usually, they can be, they're ad hoc committees, so if something came up where you needed community members on the committee, you
Like,
could
we
add
talked
them.
about adding if
We
needed.
talked about adding them later, so for instance, if that committee was a committee that took hold, part of the year, you might want to have that be a budget advisory committee, in which case you'd add people from the community. Right
So-
now, we're looking at communications, and I actually went back to the original document for the agenda to the meeting and took a look at, one of the bullet points said, how to remain accountable to constituents and stakeholders within the confines of the law and the role of the board. And I think that would be a really good thing to talk about at a board advisory committee. The other thing I thought about when I looked back at our notes that we have a little bit later, we talked about, in terms of communication, a platform. You know, how are we going to use the different platforms? And I don't think the answer is going to come from this group. You know, I think the answer needs to come from a wider group that understands different platforms than we do. And so maybe those two things might be two really good tasks for sitting down and trying this out. And I think also, whatever the committee is going to define itself in a way.
And it's a committee that reports back during this meeting on a monthly basis.
It's an advisory committee.
But we're asking that they report back.
Right.
Just like we do for the
For all of the
elementary
other
chief committee and
committees,
all
yeah,
that.
for all of the other committees, it's an advisory committee, so. I don't know what anybody else
And
has to say
so
about
you're
that.
imagining it at this point being a monthly meeting, the goal of which could change, or it would be called?
Yeah, don't you think?
Well, that's the part that
It's
we
the part
kept,
we
that we
couldn't
kept going
write.
back and forth on. Is it a standing committee that is there and then deals with whatever bubbles up as we need advice on? Or is it a series of ad hoc committees that get created when we know that there's an issue?
Right.
Or do we start
don't
as
have
a
an
standing
idea of
committee
that.
because we're
Right.
feeling a need to create that with the understanding that down the road it could wane to an ad hoc committee?
We actually have things that maybe that committee needs to do right now. And so, if that gets done and the committee, it becomes the committee on committees, like we always joke about, we don't want to.
This is why we started talking about more board members. because
Exactly.
If you start having too many committees, the board members simply cannot.
I don't see
Split
it,
themselves that
honestly,
way.
I don't see something like this going away. I don't see it going away. I think it could be a really important thing, even if there's no burning issue on the table at a particular time, a really important thing to sit down and talk.
And the best part about it, I mean, it's similar to language that Waterville has in theirs. And ours actually, what was interesting is we have a policy about this committee. And it's really out of date. I mean, it talks about the president doing this and the president doing things that a president doesn't even normally wouldn't have the authority to do.
It's from 1989.
It is.
And it was revised in 2011. I don't
But
think
it
it
would
was revised
provide
very much,
that,
so.
that safe road. It would provide that opportunity for people to get feedback on the variety of issues that questions have been asked about.
Yes.
That could happen, and give us advice towards it. And I think it would be of great value.
I mean, I think like exactly what you're saying, and I know I'm echoing it, but it really is gonna serve as that vehicle to have that open line of communication between everybody who touches things in school, admin, and the board.
Yes.
I think it's the vehicle to do it.
And the wording of that agenda piece, within the law and within the role of the board, I think we're all gonna really be able to understand what we can do.
Well, I think that's the real big difference. I think what happens now, because some people will be saying, well, there is open communication, you can come here and you can express yourself. But the problem is, we can't necessarily respond right then, because like you, even as the president, can't say, well, this is the board, because we haven't talked about it, we just heard it.
That's right.
The advisory committee gives us that opportunity for a group of people to actually have the conversation without being a binding conversation because of quorum, and really hash out what the issues are, and then bring it to us, thought out, so that we can then.
I think, and a committee like this also gives us the opportunity to not circumvent people that are in the building. And to me, that is a really, really important thing. I don't think that the board should be usurping the role of somebody in the building.
Nor are we best placed to
We
do
are.
most of it.
We are. We
Right.
usually can't.
So, because it sounds like we all agree,
We do.
I think it's important that before we move on, that we decide what the makeup is, how we figure out who those people are, and how we get that moving before next month. I feel like this is a really important thing that we need to get moving on. So if we approve this and move forward, or I guess we're not. It's
And I
just a
think we just are
discussion piece,
discussing it now.
but I feel like we really should.
Can we, if we
Figure out a
choose
way
to move on it, can we move on it?
I think we can.
No?
I was going to suggest that we get together and do a draft, after hearing this discussion. And then at the next meeting, the draft could be, it would be, it would be at least something to edit. It's, rather than sitting here and trying to invent a committee, and
Well-
trying to invent everything about it, if we had a draft.
But that's also one more month before any type
Work
of
can get done.
any work can get done, and that's the problem with how we function.
Well,
because
you
we
can
function
use,
monthly.
you
but
can use the old policy, it's still in effect.
It
and
is.
you can
The
form
old-
a committee.
Yeah, I was gonna
old
say, we don't
policies-
need to
the
vote,
old
we just need
policies
to decide to make a committee.
You can do
we
it.
just need to
Yeah.
get people.
We
Perfect.
I decide to make a committee, who's
Matter of
on
fact,
it
Terry,
and what
the
the
old
goals
policy
are.
says you can do it. so
Exactly.
it can
No,
happen.
well, you know what? That old policy is going to be different next month, but it
Right,
says the
but
board
right
can,
now-
and we.
Right. So this committee
My-
doesn't need to be in policy. This
No,
is the
and my
board.
initial thinking about, when I was first thinking about it, I was just thinking about getting, X number of stakeholders together, sitting down and talking about what does this committee need to be like.
And I think that's the
Mhm.
piece that we need to do
Yeah,
and
I do
do
too.
sooner than the end of April. Because after last month's meeting, and then we had our workshop, I couldn't think of the word. And now we're here, and now we're a month out already. And I just really feel that it's important that we.
So we either need to act on it tonight, or we can't act on it again until next month.
Well,
You have another opportunity to,
I don't think we need to act on it. I
Okay.
think we could call, I think we could have a meeting. That's acting on it. I don't think we have to make a motion
So our
or vote.
our action on it today is to go ahead with forming a board
Is
advisory
to,
committee.
is to have a meeting of stakeholders with the purpose of forming a board advisory committee.
And how do we decide who those stakeholders are? Not how do we decide, but how is it decided who those stakeholders are?
I think that's going to evolve when people sit down and get together. I don't think we're going to pick the people tonight.
Well, but part of it is a board-driven, the board is requesting this committee, so
Yeah.
part of it is board-driven. So
Yeah.
the board should lay out at least a partial skeleton of a board member, an administrator, a teacher from
Secretary,
each level.
yeah.
Do we want a non-instructional staff
Yes,
member?
Because I have this written in the first, it was staff, faculty, administration, board,
Mhm.
and then we were considering, in the workshop, we were considering a student
And a parent,
and a parent.
which could be pulled in for certain.
Right, but I think from just to start as a skeleton crew, I would say that those 4 seats at the table
Yeah.
represent all constituents and a stakeholder. And if I'm missing someone,
I don't think so. No, I think, you know, those people could get together and they might decide, okay, we need 2 board members, we need 2 people from primary, we need 2 people from middle school, we need 2 people. You know, that to me is the discussion that forms the committee.
yeah,
That's fine.
exactly.
You know, so.
So who are we tasking to be that person that starts that and gets that meeting up and running?
Does anyone want to volunteer to do that?
Not morally identity opposed, again, we're just
Yeah.
down to time.
We're just down to time, that's right.
I,
I'm happy to.
do you want
Sure.
to?
So why
Okay.
don't you talk to, administration about time and place and who?
Okay.
And that would be very few people. We're talking about 4 people at the table.
No, 5.
5.
Yeah, primary, secondary teacher, and non-instructional, and board and administrator. And again, one of the things we had talked initially was that that board member could rotate,
We
Yeah.
talked about rotating.
almost
because
intentionally.
I was gonna say, going back to the next
Yeah.
follow-up.
The other
item.
one was not
Me-
rotating.
Right,
Correct. So, okay, that's.
well, it could rotate after a year.
Yeah, right, correct.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. That's good.
Okay. Plan.
Okay, and then the second one, the second item was something that I volunteered to do, was we did have a discussion about human resources and how that works at other places and it doesn't work here. So I did talk to people from labor relations and BOCES who were already signed up for that service. Really, the discussion was a very preliminary discussion because we really haven't defined exactly what we want. And in my mind, that is going to come from that board advisory committee, probably. So they can help us, they are willing to help us when we can get them more information about what we actually need. They suggested that if we are moving this year, that we define it for just a finite time period. We know what we need, so, you know, if we have 12 weeks left in the school year, that we try this for 12 weeks and move on from there. So that is possible. We need more information to bring to them, and I'll be happy to do that when we get more information.
So when you say we're already enrolled in it, that means we already have access to?
We have access, we are enrolled in labor relations.
Okay.
And
Policy development.
right, and so it's possible, and I don't know how, I don't know if we'd have to share, I don't know if we'd have to, you know, share that service with somebody else since we're,
So,
I just think
so if we're already enrolled in it, what does that mean?
means that I don't know.
Until we know what we need,
Until
we don't know what it
Until we
needs.
know
Okay.
what we need, I don't know financially what it needs. I don't even know what they have available in terms of.
Being
you know,
enrolled, we don't even know what's
right,
available
people.
to us because we don't know.
We don't know what people they have available, so
Okay.
I will follow up on that when we get more information. And then the next item was yours, Ellen, and you talked about the goal of the meeting with the superintendent, the HDA president, and the board of education.
Right, and so that, the idea of that was a fixed committee that would be the superintendent, the HTA president, and a single board member that we had talked about being stable for a year. And the task that I took from the workshop was trying to come up with a goal, to lay out a goal for that meeting. And again, what I have written down is truly a starting point, because, again, I don't know. So I want to, it was a starting point meant to be for discussion, not meant to be the done deal. So A confidential meeting to facilitate an open, ongoing line of communication and to create a forum to address the more difficult professional concerns that are not appropriate for public or larger group meetings and that cannot be solved at the principal level or are not, that's not what, or are appropriate for the superintendent level, is what it's supposed to say.
How does that differ from the meetings that take place now? How does that differ from what currently happens?
There was no real goal set.
There
for those
hasn't
meetings.
been a real goal set, but we meet this week.
Okay.
And we can put that as the top of our agendas to sort of
Talk that out.
talk it out, redefine it, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it was created as a space to facilitate communications.
Yes.
It was
Which I think
not
that is doing.
necessarily created as a problem-solving
It is
space.
not a, well, no, there
I
are
think it
some
has been
problems
problem-solving, but it wasn't
Yeah.
created as that. It wasn't tasked as that.
Correct.
And so the idea of this would actually be tasking that as a problem-solving session. So, again,
So if Stephanie and Dr. A took that this week and
get back, is that
Get
what you
back.
want to take that? I will email that.
Yeah, if you
Get back.
send that, yeah, because we can sort of wordsmith that a little bit, talk it out, and make sure
And
that
again,
all
it was a starting
parties are in agreement of that goal and the reason that we're meeting. Yeah, that's perfect. You're good with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, so that goes back to
That meeting. And then the last follow-up that I have is talking about the communication platforms. I did have a community member talk, we were laughing about Twitter just because, and I did have a community member tell me this week that the superintendent, I think it is at Morrisville,
Yep.
uses Twitter and uses it very successfully for a particular demographic in the school. What do you think about having that as
I
a
have-
Go ahead.
I was tasked with communication.
I didn't have your name
I
yet.
did.
Excellent.
I know it's surprising, I did what I was told to do, but I'll try to keep this semi-short. First, I looked at the things that we currently use and that we look at as kind of this is the way we communicate. For example, our official press is the Mid-York Weekly, which has changed dramatically, and I was shocked at how much it changed. Its circulation used to be in the thousands and thousands. Its circulation right now is 295.
Oh.
There are school newspapers that have a higher circulation than that. There are church bulletins that get printed in higher quantities than that. So the thought which has been a good thought in the past, is that this went to every mailbox. Everyone, even if they didn't read it, you could say you got it to them. Now isn't even close to doing that. Even on its Facebook page, it only has 71 people following it on Mid-York's Facebook page. And our webpage, which I'll get to in a minute, because I looked at that as a separate issue, that was one of the other kind of bedrocks that this is how we get communication out. The problem is this doesn't deal with the way people communicate today. The way people communicate today, if you look at the majority of U.S. adults, 62% get their news on social media. And for them, 2/3 get it on Facebook, 59%, and this number is rising every day, get their news on Twitter. So you may ask why, because it seems from our generation that's bizarre. But we're used to going to news, of an older generation, used to going to where you need to get news. It was consumer driven. So you went to a newspaper, you went to the TV station you liked, you went to the webpage to find what you needed to know. It's not the way people get information now. They expect it to be driven to them. We are not driving any content to anyone. We are expecting them to come to us to find what they want to need. And that's just not the way the world functions today. So although I think we are fearful at times of social media, we're fearful of some of the things that have happened with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snap and all of that. The fact is, if we're not there, we're invisible. And if we're not getting our message out that way, the message isn't known. So I think it's one of the things we have to look into. When I went to the NSBA conference in Buffalo, there was a gentleman there who was a PR person from the Albany, BOCES area, But he had a couple quotes that I thought were interesting. He talked about all these things as branding your school and your institution. And he said that, find the quote here, that we should allow people to reply on social media, something that we're afraid of. We don't want to post things there because we're afraid of what the responses are going to be. He says that most of the time is a good thing, that we should listen to the opposition. One, because they aren't always wrong. You can get good information. You can manage it, but most importantly, how you answer the questions and how you reply becomes your brand and your culture. It represents and displays what you are as an institution and how you reply to people that are responding to you. And he also said, as a great quote, said, being perfect is the enemy of getting things done. So often we wait to try to have the perfect statement, the perfect thing, the perfect reply, which means we don't do anything. What we need to do is get some things done. I think this is most shown in our webpage. I know a lot of money was spent on it at one point in time. I'm sure at the time that it was first put in, it was of quality, but it has slowly drifted away from that. So I'm just going to give you a few quick ones. I'll try to do as fast as I can. As I tell Stephanie all the time, I love her son, but every single time since October that I open our website, that's the picture that's up.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed in months. And I thought we got a camera to do all of that. I don't know who's responsible for putting content, but it hasn't changed. There's a whole lot of curriculum maps that are missing. Links to Colgate and SUNY Morrisville, both broken. You can't get from our website to those institutions. The automated phone line given in the closing and delay section under the Parents tab doesn't work. Most forums don't allow you to fill out the form online. Now that, again, for our generation doesn't seem like a big shot. You just print it and fill it out. Most people today are expecting if I get a form, I can just type it in. I can submit it right then. The athletic forms, they can be open, though they don't fit within the frame. So it's very difficult. You have to keep shifting the frame around to get to the information. I know this is a more recent thing, but there's different areas. For example, one to report an absence, there's no area code on the phone number. Now you have to have it. And many websites, many devices now, when it sees a number, automatically has that as a link. But since there's no area code, it's not going to work if you click on it. The Emerald Fund and Hall of Fame haven't been updated since 2015. Grades K through 5 counseling page is blank. Links for parents is inactive. Summer programs under construction since January 2016. Scholarship and financial aid, at least when I checked, hadn't been updated since March. Dignity, last year. Dignity for all students is blank. Regents exam schedule is still January. APPR is dated 2012. District policies page is inactive or protected. None of this shocks or surprises me. This is what always happens when you create a web page and someone isn't tasked with the really time-consuming, boring job of updating it, of checking all those links, making sure that it's still the product that you originally purchased. So I think going forward, we need to look at that. One creative way, and maybe in the advisory committee or something else, what a few schools that I looked at and talked to did, they created a class in social media. The students are doing it. The students are updating it and keeping it all vibrant, and they're taking ownership of it and making it vibrant and new. I also think we need to seriously look at creating Twitter accounts, maybe Snap account, Instagram account. This is where our parents and students are expecting us to drive content to them. And I know people are going to hate it, but we should look at Nextdoor Hamilton. Again, it's a system that drives data to the consumer, to our clientele. That's what we should do. And from the newspaper point of view, I understand that it's expensive to put things in, but as Michelle told me from Sunday's paper, VBS has in the briefly section their board meeting is going to meet. I'm sure they just sent a press release. Again, it takes someone to do it.
They also post their agenda at their library. We could send our agenda and the date to the library and ask them to post it. People go to the library. Maybe people will see it. Again, but it's us trying.
It's a visual.
And right now, we're reaching 290 people.
When we're lucky. But I think there's creative ways to do this. Not only our own students can do this, but there are plenty of college programs doing PR, communication, media work. Will they have an intern that could possibly do some of this? I don't know. But if we don't task someone to do this, we're never going to get in front of it. We're never going to get on top of it. And I can't imagine who you would task that's already here. They're already working so hard to say, now today, look up this every single time. But I think it could be a full-time intern, a full-time student group. I think it could potentially be a class that people would want to take and would really develop a skill set that down the road, you know, when they're going to college, so they could really market that they have this experience.
Does BOCES have any
They do.
things like this?
They actually have, I know that the Rome district, there's a cost associated with it, but the Rome district was going through the same kind of turmoil we're going through. And this was about a year and a half ago. And they used the system and they completely revamped their Facebook page and the way they branded their school on social media. They were extremely happy with it. I think you're right. I mean, I think we could look at the Upstate Institute, for instance, and see about where we would go to, even if we had a class. I think interns or people from Kids in Colgate could intern here and help us with this. I'm on another board that is getting help from them right now for branding. So.
I'm on the Upstate Institute board.
Okay. But, yeah, it is available through Statman, not Statman, but somebody else is in charge of it. I can't remember who.
Again, they do summer interns, so it's potentially you could have a college student working in the summer, putting it all together, and then having a way to move forward.
It's a little
And their summer starts in May.
Yep.
So.
I do too.
Oh, yeah, I like it. I agree.
Yeah, I think the thing that I worry about is maintaining it. It really needs to be tasked as someone's job. Again, creating the class is the same problem we have with every other class in that you've only got so many kids and when you move them around from space to
And
space.
that may not be the answer, but I
Right.
think we need to look at all the possibilities. And
Well,
we need to take the dive into the Twitter, the things that drive content, but we can't do that till we have someone prepared to reply. Because
Yes,
the
exactly.
responses are going to come back and
Well,
we need to
also
be ready.
Just thinking that the Emerald Foundation actually used to fund some student interns from our kids. And if we wanted our kids to do that and there weren't a class, that might be a possibility to look at something like that too. We used to have a couple of years.
what are the fiscal implications of being a part-time employee and being a full-time?
Depends on what
Employee.
employee.
Really what it comes down to.
There were some good places to go with those 4 items. Thanks, everybody. And that brings us to the first reading of the pre-calculus textbook, and that's just a first read. Anybody?
I'm not reading it.
There it is.
So that's not
Poor
That's
kids.
not the one that's visual.
Gotta laugh at all of it.
Because I had to laugh because it
And
wasn't
happy,
visual.
too.
I see it.
It's so bad.
There was a day where I would have loved that. I just don't remember how to do it anymore.
Not everything I love.
So can I ask just a general question as we're
Yeah.
doing these textbooks?
Yeah.
How often, typically, are textbooks rolled over?
Usually 5 years, but
But some of these, you said yours was 10, right? I think.
We haven't had a new pre-calc book in
Yeah,
quite a
it's
long
usually-
time.
Okay.
It's
No, I'm
usually-
just, again, I'm just trying
Usually
to
5
sort of get
years,
a
but
sense of.
I think more often in AP classes because in the last 10 years, AP curricula have changed. And so as new standards have come in, those have been a little bit more often.
I would say this because math hasn't changed, but I want to go home tonight.
Look at that. Okay, that brings us to the foreign language trip. Can I have motions to approve the foreign language club trip to Spain, France, and Italy during the spring 2018 break, contingent upon meeting all planning requirements of the administration. Please note that the Board of Education reserves the right to cancel the trip if circumstances should arise concerning the safety of students.
Need for that.
I'll second, and then I have a question.
Okay.
Can we amend the name of the file? It says FL trip. It's like,
Foreign language, it looks
I
like a
guess
Florida
it
trip?
looks like a Florida trip. So that's what I opened it expecting, and then it had nothing to do with Florida. And I think it
Florence.
should be a little bit easier to understand. So I'd like, other than that, that's fine, but.
And full disclosure,
So we have.
I don't think we need to abstain, but full disclosure, Steph and I both have kids that would be involved in this.
Okay, I thought you were sitting here acting smug because you were actually going.
No!
No, we've not
I'm
been
actually pretty
invited.
bitter about that,
We've not
but my
been
kids
invited.
going on this trip.
So you could second this motion.
Their names are not.
We have a
I
first.
could second it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I second it.
Oh, no.
Oh, you
did
did
already
second.
I just, in the spirit of full
Yeah.
disclosure.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then we have
We
the
have time to
first
go.
reading. We don't have to do anything except discuss of this very, of the policy. And we took out a lot of the old language and made it briefer and made it pretty, I think, easy to use. So it's just a first read. Any discussion about that? Okay, that brings us to information and correspondence. First, we have the administrator's report. Any questions for them or discussion about anything in the this report?
I didn't get a chance to read this, but too much weight. Is there anything in that
It's short, it's not long. I got it,
Here.
yeah, it's about staffing. Any other discussion that brings us to the superintendent's report?
Sure. The first one is a follow-up that came up at the last board meeting, just regarding CNS and our relationship with them. It is an informal relationship whereby what could have happened is if we put out a proposal late spring, if they put in for it and they qualify, we take them as a partner. And they did not. And in the past, as I understand it, we didn't give them any money, which we're supposed to give them 10% of the amount of state money that we get. We didn't do that. We gave them classroom space.
When we were partnered.
Well, we never have been officially partners. And so what happened was, if we were partners, we would be required to give them close to $7,000. At this point, we give them classroom space because we have it, and because we serve the same students. If we need the space, we wouldn't be able to do that. The other thing is that, they are, Colgate owns the building. We partner with Colgate on a lot of things. They're good neighbors, we're good neighbors, and we happen to have the space. So there's, that's the nature of the relationship as it stands now. They get space, we can afford it, in terms of it doesn't cost us anything. And that was the follow-up that came up at the last meeting. It had come up before, and that's the homework that we did. The other, I'm so thoroughly pleased. This Saturday, we had the District 5 FFA competition here at Hamilton Central School. Students had all different competitions, public speaking, job interviews. On a snowy Saturday morning, the community showed out, volunteers, so thoroughly impressed. We had little armies of students setting up on Friday before. Just such a pleasant leadership experience for these young people. Trustee Fidel volunteered, if you can just say something. That's how.
I was just completely impressed by the organization. Johanna had it down to, the schedule. It was well done. It was well organized. People had I think a very enjoyable time. It was nice to have our school represented in that way. We had a lot of teachers come out who were acting as judges and timers and all different capacities. And I was in a classroom, I was a timer, I was in a classroom, and I was so thoroughly impressed with a student from Madison High School that I wrote her name down, and I'm going to contact their FFA advisor to see if she'll come give that exact speech to our Rotary. Because she was, hands down, just so poised, and I just can't say enough about the things that I saw there. And again, just I was so happy that Hamilton, we were able to showcase that, and thanks to everybody that was there. I know that a lot of the folks here were there, and so
Yeah.
I was just so happy.
Yeah. Thoroughly impressed. Thank you to everyone who came. Also, we had former Hamilton graduate, Colgate graduate, NBA All-Star, Donald Foyle come and read to our elementary students. That was amazing. It was set up by our librarian. It was just so thoroughly pleased that students are making the connections, and he met with the Mr. Blackford and the boys varsity basketball team as well. Just a great day for everyone. The next one is I was in Albany on Monday and Tuesday to meet with our legislators. That was lobby day and the state superintendent's conference. Everyone was there to let their representatives know that the governor's budget really does not work. Central New York, districts like ours get the short change big time, although everyone in education is not getting what they need. But a district like ours is hit hard. So we were there. Our legislators understand where we are, and they will advocate. And so I wanted to share that. The final thing is we created a Twitter account. Strictly enough. We've been testing it behind the scenes because it's not ready to go public yet. And it will show up on the webpage. One of the challenges that we're looking at in terms of, and it's not public because we're testing it, the ability to respond is a responsibility that the Morrisville superintendent has not taken on, because then it's more of a job.
Yeah.
So the way they have it is you can share it or you can like it. So I'm working with Mrs. Lobsher, I'm working with our technology computer person, and to put some finishing touches on that and then test it a little bit. And testing it without the ability to reply, just because that takes on another dynamic that she or I, we just want to play with it a little bit. And we are working with our contact at the MORIC to clean up the website. It's a little bit much for an individual right now. We have to find out a better way, but there's some great ideas that came up tonight that would be able to help us without taking on the additional expense. So more to come, and we might even have a presentation at the next meeting, because I'm working with the Morrisville superintendent on, and it just transitions to my last thing, on the ability to have our students from Hamilton have a better football experience at the varsity level. So we've been in conversations, and it's very positive. I don't have an announcement yet. At some point I'll bring to the board a recommendation to appoint someone from Hamilton. He'll bring his board a recommendation to appoint someone from Hamilton, and then it'll be in your hands to kind of vote on it or not. So we're working behind the scenes, and it's been a work in progress, but we're getting some things done. That's my superintendent's report at this time.
Okay, the next item is, I think, just an informational item. The BOCES annual meeting is on April 12th. So it's a great event. I have one more informational item from BOCES. Pardon? I am.
Do you know what time it starts, Terry?
I'm going to guess 6, but I don't know that for sure. Maybe 5:30?
You were telling me about.
I have 6. But, you could go at 5:30. I don't know. I just wrote down 6 when I was at their meeting, so.
I would highly recommend.
I would highly recommend it if you can
All
go.
board members go. It's-
Yeah, you can. The culinary arts kids, okay, the culinary arts kids cook. It's a chance to meet superintendents and board members from all over the district. So, it's at 6 o'clock, yeah. Debbie thinks maybe 5:30. I'll find that out.
Yeah, and I put that on my calendar as well.
Okay.
let me know.
Put me down.
Anybody else?
Right, it's good. And the other thing from BOCES is just that I saw a presentation. The RIC has hired 2 new assistant directors who are really focusing on instruction. And they have 55 districts, but they're really focusing on how to sustainably support technologies in school. And one of them is Eric Coriel, who I'm sure everybody remembers from Hamilton. But it was really, really exciting. I think they really have started with a strategic plan and a vision, and they're talking about things like doing maker spaces in schools. So I don't have a lot of specific information right now, but as that unfolds, I'll keep everybody informed, because I think it's going to be exciting. So. Okay, so superintendent's conference days.
Sure. On March 17th, it's going to be an entire day devoted to instructional technology, professional development. There'll be workshops provided by the MORIC Model Schools, MORIC Administrative and Student Support, and Hamilton Central School staff members, and that's going to be going on. So we just wanted to say that the principals work together with Ms. Lobster and teachers and the MORIC to kind of put together something that would benefit everybody in this area. And for some it'll be informational, for some it'll be skill building, for some it'll be taking their skills to another level. So that's what the March 17th Superintendent's Conference Day will be.
And that has a budget update?
Sure. We've submitted our tax cap calculation to the New York State Office of the Comptroller. Our final calculated allowable tax levy under the state tax cap is 1.5%. That's based on a variety of factors. To kind of put that into perspective, that amounts to about $106,000 of our tax levy as far as allowable increase under the tax cap. We do have a payment in lieu of taxes coming on the books next year for Good Nature. So our total, to have a tax cap compliant budget, our total increase in tax revenue, which is more than half of our budget, is about $113,000. Based on the governor's state aid proposal for 2017-18, I've gone through this the last couple months. The 1% increase in foundation aid for us is about $31,000. Hopefully, as Dr. Olson said, lobbying efforts were productive, and hopefully if there's an on-time state budget within the next couple of weeks, around April 1st, hopefully we'll find out we're getting some more state aid. But as it stands right now, our 2 primary sources of revenue being tax revenue and foundation aid, $144,000. So that's 2% on our tax levy. That's about 1.2% of our total budget. So it gives you kind of an idea of the constraints we're working with. And we do have certain expenditures we're going to see some relief in. We do see a little bit of an infusion in some expense-based aids, primarily excess costs for special ed students, as we've seen a rise in special ed students that we educate with the district. So really the next couple weeks is really going to be where we really dive in and see where we are budget-wise. Last week we had budget coffee. We had one in the morning, one in the evening. I thought they were very productive, particularly the one in the evening was pretty well attended. We sent out, Paul, you mentioned communication, and I agree. I think historically we have sat back and waited for people to come to us, and there have literally been times where we sit there and nobody comes. We did send out a blast through our online system to people, and the morning one we didn't have people show up, but in the evening we did have, not a lot of people, but we did have people show up. So hopefully that was effective. Maybe that's a reason why, and we'll keep doing that. Really what I want to mention though, and I know a couple of you were there, I was really, the format I thought and the direction of where the conversation went, I thought was very productive. And pretty quickly, I basically gave the same update that I gave you folks just now about the revenue side of the budget where we're at, but then we had a really good discussion on some environmental factors and some community-specific challenges that we are facing here in Hamilton, both in recent years and in moving forward in the near future. And we got some really good feedback from people. We talked a lot about tax rates, property values, lack of housing, and the enrollment issues really that's led to where we are now. So I thought it was very productive. I'm curious for the board members that attended, as we segue into some of the housekeeping things with the budget process, I would be open to having more meetings, sort of that format to,
Yep.
I mean, my feeling is at the risk of sort of devaluing what I'm doing, if I sit up here and talk about these numbers, I don't think, it's not real engaging, and it's hard to talk about in the sense that people can understand and grasp it. I felt like last week was more productive. So one of the things I want to bring up now, April 10th is going to be a pretty, we're going to shoot for April 10th as far as having a budget developed, but I'm curious to what you think about between now and April 10th, some more outreach we can do. One of the things that we've done historically is we've had a budget workshop. It's kind of a marathon where everybody comes in every 20 minutes. As far as departmentally, do you want to scrap that? You still want to have it? Would you rather have 4 more coffees? I'm up for suggestions. And I can tell you at first glance, transportation, custodial maintenance, we talk about those budgets at the workshop. I don't foresee any major changes. I mean, I'm not saying that to downplay, but I don't. Our maintenance budget's our maintenance budget. There's not a whole lot of change from year to year. Not going to be anything that really impacts the budget. So I want to hear some suggestions, if you don't mind. What you think we should do in the next few weeks as we ramp up and get ready for April 10th?
I agree with you about the discussion. I mean, I was at the morning one, and there were, it was not well attended, but I think as you get closer to budget time and budget vote time, it's going to be more interesting to people. It's going to be more people are going to come out. I think the discussion about our real estate realities, that was great. Those were great discussions. I understand you guys had them too, so I'd certainly be open to trying more budget coffees. That would be good.
That marathon meeting, my understanding of it was sort of to push information to us about the status of each department. I know that I want to.
We have one scheduled for the 21st.
Yeah, it's not going to happen on the 21st. It will be later. I mean, that's a tentative date we picked early in the fall. We're not going to be prepared by then, so it's not going to be the 21st.
Do we want to really scrap that? Is there a different way or a better way to do that? Is it?
Well, if things aren't going to change a lot, could we have summaries?
Well, we could. I'll throw out a suggestion. We could do a couple more coffees, and we could split up
Bring those
some of those topics and focus on them at the coffees, and then open it up to a more general discussion for those in attendance. But again, I can tell you, building and grounds, there's not a whole lot to talk about.
Until we have to do a capital budget.
That's right.
Which is not this year.
Not this year.
So do you want to set those dates and?
We can. I don't know what the best thing to do
Before
would be.
what
I mean, we
date?
could
Like,
do-
what would be you want to have the budget set by?
I mean, I would say it would have to be, ideally it would be, if we did one, again, I think it's best if we do an AM one and a PM one that are the same, but it allows people with different schedules to come. But if we did one the week of the 27th, and then we did another one the week of the 3rd, 2 previous weeks prior to the 10th, and then we'll have a pretty good idea of what the overall budget's going to look like during those, and then we'll just update you as we.
And when you pick the dates, we'll do what we did last time. We'll see who's available to be there, as long as.
Well, maybe, Deb, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but if you and I sit, if Debbie and I sit down tomorrow and look at those 2 weeks and maybe pick a couple dates for each week and then she can reach out to you folks, and I think it's important for you to be there as well, at one of them. It would be important for,
One of the things that was discussed
I guess you
was-
can't be there, all three, can three be at one meeting or not? So if you have to have 3 meetings.
Well, it's
three copies.
it's a public meeting. It's not a meeting in public.
There's no action being taken.
Well, we would just have to
Action being
advertise, we would have to post it.
As long as it's
Right, but if there's no action being
It'll be
taken and we're not
posted.
moving,
It'll
can
be
we have
posted
3 of us
anyway.
there?
Well, we haven't just budget copy and three
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
It's not a board meeting.
No,
We're
it's
supposed
not.
to- As a special meeting, we're just
I
coming
don't
for
think
a
there's a
budget
problem.
copy.
Yes,
and
there
we
is.
have-
We'll reach out to you tomorrow, and then we'll get it, we'll do a blast, and
Okay.
And maybe
Sure.
post in another location, like next to Hamilton or the library or something.
I always post all of our meetings in the library and in the town office. They don't get the agenda, but they get that we're having the meetings are being posted there in those two particular places. I can't do next to Hamilton, I can't do in town.
I mean, they're being posted, you know, because people, some of the teachers are posting them, and that's
Yeah.
great, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
We had talked at one point about is there value in taking them to different venues, holding them in different places.
We talked about
Yeah.
could be, yeah.
We talked about Hubbardsville.
Well, yeah, last year we went to Madison Lane, but that was after, once the budget was adopted by
Set
the board,
before the
it's
vote.
more of
That makes
an
sense, yeah.
outreach to garner support, get people to come out and vote, inform people, because as the vote gets closer, we have to, we're mandated to have our budget here. You know, the purpose for going out to Madison Lane was to reach out to people that you would be able to come.
Right.
And obviously, we send out a newsletter and do all that stuff, but, yeah, that's certainly something we're open to. If there's a civic club, an organization, yeah, anytime, we can go anywhere.
Thank you. We've got steering team updates. What about the elementary steering team? Did you guys meet?
We did. Kevin's missing, but, we did meet, we reviewed the progress that we had made to date. Then we talked about, working on updating the policy that we need to update to bring to the board. And, we are still working on our biggest item, which is streamlining communications. And we've done a little bit with that so far, but that's the big ticket item still. So, it was a good meeting. We meet again, the 1st of April. First week of April.
We finally met. We finally met. The weather held up and we met. And we missed 2 months, so we had a little bit of catching up to do. But we made some good inroads. Bill maybe can talk about the information you brought from the other school about absenteeism.
Sure. At our, it's one of our goals for our Secondary Principals Advisory Council. It's the regional principals and the component districts meet, and we're talking about chronic absenteeism and the problems that it's causing from an academic standpoint. So at our last SPAC meeting, Mary Walker, who was the principal at Camden, shared their aim for success, is what they call it, program, and it's really good. So she shared that with us, and I shared it with the steering committee, and we're going to take bits and pieces of that and use in our proposal when we're ready.
And furthermore, Bill and I are going to meet with the psychologist from the hospital, who is going to talk about doing some community outreach to our school, insofar as helping to train, do some professional development, do some esteem building, and for parents, staff, faculty, kids, board, and he's a great resource, and he's an HCS grad. And so, so it's really neat. He's super excited about coming, so we meet with him on the 6th.
The 6th, yeah.
Yep, so we're just going to brainstorm ideas of, some ways to do different things, and he is really, really interested in helping the school. So,
Are you guys also reviewing the attendance policy? Have you guys looked at that?
attendance policy,
I know you were.
well, that's
I know
part
you've
of,
got the data.
yeah, it's part of it.
Yeah, Mr. Arquette brought that to one of our initial meetings, and that's included in our folder. And we continue to look at, what are we doing or not doing that other districts are doing that may have some success, so.
We talked a lot about the attendance policy. This sort of sparked my memory. We talked a lot about when students are absent from school or not there for the majority of the day and then want to participate in extracurricular activities, play, band, sports, etc. And we had good discussion around that because that is going to be difficult. That is going to be a difficult conversation. Where we go with this.
That's one policy that the board is supposed to review every year. We're supposed to just read it. We don't have to change it. But we haven't done that yet, and we're also supposed to be looking at attendance data every year. And I just
that they are pulling together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe your committee will share that with us. Yep. I've got ours, and I have the NISBA sample. If you guys want to take a look
I think
at
that
it.
would be something that we could pull in, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That would be helpful. We have to read that. So. Okay. Got a strategic planning update, and we met this week. Great meeting. I thought it was a great meeting. We're looking at mission statements. There was a committee of 4 or 5 people that got together in the interim and wrote some drafts. We started looking at the data from the survey that everybody took at the beginning of the year. We looked at the data. We looked at the part of the survey that came from the employees in the building, the personnel in the building. Next time we're going to be looking at student data, and then after that community data. And I was thinking a little bit about it. We have talked about a 360, and depending on how many people answered that survey, if we could look at that data at some point, I think that is going to be similar to a 360. The strategic planning team is pulling together trends in the data from the 3 groups, and I'll try to see if I can get it for the board too. So.
As far as, I have one of my assigned questions for follow-up is about employee satisfaction, whether or not that could be a goal in strategic planning. So if you could let me know about that on the next, that would be a way to get.
I think it's going to be a big goal.
check
I don't think they're going to word it like that. I think it's going to, they're going to be talking about, they're going to be forming different task forces to work on things that come out after the review of the data. And I'm absolutely sure communication and job satisfaction, that'll be part of that. So.
How are we doing on a timeline for strategic planning?
We asked them if we could go out 1 month, and they said absolutely. I don't know if we're going to finish in the allotted time or not. We may and may not. She told us last time that some schools actually take a year to get a quality plan. Just writing this mission statement, it's so hard. It doesn't seem like it should be, but it really is. If it's going to be meaningful. So we're not scheduled for any more time now, but we might be.
Now, I know they always say that it's okay to go longer, but at what cost?
At what cost? Yeah, that was my
It's a great
well,
question.
I took it as free.
Well,
that was a mistake.
I have to quote the CEO
Clarify.
and see if we can work. So she's been very flexible, and of course, free is the end game. Free, if we can get it free. But if we can't, we'll see what kind of deal we can make. So that's where we are.
And how did HISP meet?
Yeah.
No, and they didn't make their trip because of weather, so the current plan is to reschedule that trip.
Yes, Mr. Downs is working on alternate dates, and what we're going to do is we're planning on meeting the first week of April anyway. So what we'd like to do is get some dates, and the date that we had, we were going to go up for the superintendent's conference day, but that doesn't work for the people here who want to go up. So what we'll do is see what dates work and then go up, and either way meet the first week of April. And we're putting together a subcommittee to start adding into the plan some of the things that we agree upon that we think would beef up the initial proposal. So that's where we are.
Okay, that brings us to our next opportunity for community participation.
Harry Jarko, teacher and member of the technology committee. We had what I thought was an interesting conversation about technology, and I want to ask you to ask some different questions. I'm on the technology committee, and we have often been asked. Jen's been made enormous efforts to try to get our input with regard to how to move forward. I give her credit for that. But whether it's the 2 presentations by BOCES, or whether it's how the question is phrased, the question is always, which should we go with? The grant or smart schools in order to improve our dreadfully woeful infrastructure? Because we only have 100 megabytes, and for X amount of money we could go to a gigabyte. And what I would submit to you is that we're asking the wrong question. I have in my hands my own beautiful, love it, Mac Pro. And I can go anywhere in this building and I call something up and it's right there. And as Mark Arquette said, he's got a relatively new laptop. He can watch 2 videos and have 10 tabs open. Most of the teachers do not bring their laptop from home, do not have a brand new laptop. They've got a 5-year or a 10-year old laptop, and it takes 2 minutes for Google to come up. We can have the fastest superhighway in the world, and we can go from 39 exit ramps to 79 exit ramps, but if all the cars have flat tires, we're not going anywhere. My classroom, my 7th and 8th graders, that's 4 of my 6 classes, have an online textbook, and we're fortunate to have Chromebooks. That's the upside. The downside, as Dr. Alston knows, as the principals know, as everybody who's in the building knows, they are falling apart. On any given day, 20% of them don't work. The mechanisms for charging them don't work, and so my kids are sharing laptops, or they're taking them off the block that aren't theirs so that they can get work done for me. And even with those that work very slowly, and it's not the infrastructure. I fully understand if we want to look 5 years and 10 years out, that as our technology becomes more data rich, and as we go more and more to heavy duty usage, absolutely we should be forward thinking with regard to our bandwidth. But if you want to spend money, you need to consider the end user, and the end users, their devices don't work, and it's not because of the infrastructure, it's because of their devices. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks for that feedback.
That's just to follow up, that was what I was trying to get at before.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the things we had raised, that would go back to that committee.
Yeah.
So,
I completely,
I'm very
from
glad
what
you
I
brought
could
that
hear,
up.
unfortunately.
yeah, sorry, okay, yep, got it.
So, no, I'm glad that you said that, because that was kind of what I was.
I think that puts us all on the same page, is where that puts us, so.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, Holly White. Just as a follow-up to what Harry said, I know you've had a discussion back and forth about whether to send the board representative to a meeting or just get notes. I do think it would be great at some point if maybe a board member could be there. It's probably not the same as just getting notes. And maybe sometimes, I don't know if it's appropriate to do during the meeting, it might not be, but rather than just going back and forth between yourselves about how technology is going, you know, there's so much information that we have that we could give you, and so many times we're just sitting there thinking, no, that's not right, or, but how do we tell them, you know? And I'm glad that Harry said that. I did have 2 questions. One is when you were discussing the issue of maintaining social media and web pages and things like that. And Dr. Larson, I believe you said, again, it was hard to hear. I heard you say something about what would be the financial implications of someone part-time. And I thought you might have said, and I hoped that you might have said, the financial implications of moving a part-time teacher possibly to full-time, and that being part of their duty. I don't know if it was, but if it was.
That was what I
kudos.
asked, yes.
Okay,
That's exactly what I asked, yes.
That's a really great idea, a way to keep maybe an excellent part-time teacher in our district. In addition, I just wanted to ask, I know that school boards have to follow different protocols than other, I guess, town municipal boards in terms of taking action in executive session. There's maybe only one rare time when you can do that. So I was wondering, are there any votes planned? Are you coming back into public session so that you can vote on anything?
Just to adjourn tonight, we don't
Okay.
have any, we have discussion items for
Okay.
executive session, but no action.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I think we had said that we would try to be better about
We would say that
saying that,
in
so
the,
we
in
need
the
to hold ourselves
agenda.
accountable.
Yeah, we were,
No, but
we
you
said
keep
we
asking
would,
us to make sure that we're there too.
yeah,
But
we
thank
said we
you,
would say
yes.
that in the agenda so that people would know that there's action to be taken. That's right.
With the agenda to
Yeah.
say that there will be a vote after, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
We're gonna lose it.
Any participation?
Hello again, Travis Ames. To go back to the social media thing, we're just talking about Twitter. Yeah, you mentioned that Mooresville's new superintendent uses it, and their community has really seemed to like it. It is kind of interesting. I don't know how many of you have, but if you go to their school webpage, they use it as his Twitter handle, whatever you call it. It's pretty much front and center on their website. And so you don't have to use Twitter to see it. If you have people that still like their website, so it's kind of interesting how they use it. So if you're looking into that, I would say look at that as a model of how to use it. As far as using social media for communication, you talked about the possibility of student access to running it, maintaining it, putting things on there. And I think that's great in theory, but if you're going to do that, I think you might need to make a policy for it. There's been different companies and organizations that have had their interns get on their social media and say unprofessional and inappropriate things that have really caused those companies and corporations and public entities a PR problem and in some ways legal issues. So if you ever do allow students or Colgate interns or whoever, you really need to look into the possible legal issues that will come from it. Because sometimes saying something for the sake of saying something isn't the best policy at all. It'll actually get you in trouble.
I'm just kind of envisioning, even back in the day when we had a print student newspaper, that was always overseen by an advisor, and I can't imagine a scenario where that would not be true.
Yeah. I'm just saying, keep it in mind. You might want to make, if you do go that route, you might need a policy or, a set of punishments for that type of behavior. Because you also will open up for bad PR. So that's that. Second thing is, I'd like to thank the administration for having the budget coffees, as I found them to be very informative. Matt and I seem to be really on the same page here. I bring this up because the evening coffee I attended, along with 2 of you and others here this evening, led to a very candid and insightful discussion on various topics, but focused in on the issue of a decline in enrollment and possible reasons for it. The type of discussions that happened at that meeting, kind of like I think Matt was alluding to, really should happen at the board. I wish they have plenty of times before, because they kind of put perspective to the numbers and the decline. So that one kind of talked about enrollment ultimately. So ultimately, to stop the decline in enrollment at HCS, there's only so much the district can do by itself. sure you can try to stop the bleeding, so to say, with proposed programs such as HISPR, for example, but to actually address the enrollment issue head-on, a different approach is needed. That is why I was so encouraged by the discussion we had that night. The stark realities behind the issues at hand were openly discussed by the community and expanded upon in a respectful manner. What I would like to see happen is to have a series of public discussions of some form that will allow the administration to better understand the reasons for and possible solutions to addressing the enrollment decline in particular. I think that's what Matt was definitely getting at there. From there, what I think you should do, I would ask the district to expand upon its newfound emphasis on communication in this way. If you could manage to gather together a group of people that represent local governments, local employers, realtors and landlords, community action and development programs, and other such people and groups. Get them in a room together and present to them our concern over a decline in enrollment and the domino effect it has had and will continue to have. Tell them the possible reasons you and the community have determined that are behind the decline in enrollment and possible solutions we've come up for them. Once you do that, just simply let the discussions go where they go, and you might in time be amazed at the possible outcomes that might come from such a think tank. Ultimately, they might not know the issues at hand. We talk about community relations all the time, but our communication problems aren't just in the district. We don't communicate properly to outside groups. Will doing so lead to anything? Who knows? But at least you can say that we went above and beyond in attempting to address the enrollment issue. So those are my thoughts, and I implore you and the administration to consider my suggestions. Thank you for my time.
Thank you for your.
Let me just say one thing. You talked about the technology and social media. I just want to make sure that we're all clear. Nothing replaces something else. Twitter doesn't replace your web page. Snapchat doesn't replace Twitter. It's always an add-on, which is frustrating when you have to try to manage it all. But that's just the way it is. Nothing replaces something else. It's got to be done across the board.
I got you. And ideally, you need to centrally locate your communication. Something I've been advocating for a lot is the majority of your communication. This is something we've talked about in the elementary steering committee to some extent, as to just the elementary committee. But I, as a parent, I, as a community member, expect to be able to go to one set place to find all of my information about the school. It can be in other platforms too, but the problem the district has had is some information will come here some of the time, some will come there some of the time. So yes, it needs to be one set form, and then if that's the Twitter, but my concerns as to the Twitter and stuff like that was just more so if you go that route.
Right. I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ferdinand from Munch. I'm going to keep this short. We all want to go home. Thank you to the administration for the budget coffee and other conversations we've had. That was great. Thank you to the board, whatever you did at your magic workshop. That great stuff. I love the follow-up. I love the thinking about advisory board. I love the stuff about platforms. I mean, you guys you created a lot more work for yourselves, and I salute you. That's totally impressive. So yay for you. One quick thing on the budget workshop question. I didn't enjoy the marathon. One thing that in previous years was useful was when it came to trade-offs. Trade-offs between instruction and administration, trade-offs within instruction, different wings of it. In one case, it was instruction and transportation, actually. There was a question, do we buy a bus or do we, that kind of stuff. And to have the chance to think about that before it's set in stone, before the whole package comes to the public, can be, I think, really valuable. And there were moments, I think, when it was helpful to think that through together. So maybe, I understand that there's some things that are basically, yes, maybe the cafeteria is kind of a no-brainer. Other things are not. In particular, if you're only expecting another 114,000, we're thinking about beefing up special education administration, which I'm not against. I'm always for full employment. I think we get better people if we have people whom we can employ full-time or for that. But there may be trade-offs there. And if they are, it's good to talk about those. So as you think about this, whether it's a budget coffee or workshop or whatever, to sort of have a discussion that addresses those potential trade-offs in public before they get made, might be helpful to you too, and certainly too. I think that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other community participation? Okay, that brings us to motions to adjourn to executive